What's up, Hyperfast Nation? On this episode of the show, I had an amazing guest who has had real estate careers in two different geographies, north and south. She has been a professional salesperson in the medical, pharmaceutical industry, built her own team, then built her own brokerage. Welcome to the show, Beth Matthews. All right, welcome to the show today, Beth. How are you doing?
Having me. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for being on today. I know this is a super busy time, maybe for some people, scary time, and just a lot of change going on in the industry. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of those changes, what you're doing, some of the things you're doing to help educate buyers, agents on changes they may need to make in their business practice. So we're going to dive into all of that. But before we do, tell the listeners out there a little bit about your background and how you got into real estate and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. I actually started my real estate career in Killeen, Texas. My former husband was active duty Army, and I stumbled into it by accident. I built my first house and loved the process and was so disappointed when it ended. I pursued my real estate license there and worked on a large productive team. So that was my first introduction to the team concept. But I completed my 4-year degree while I was there and felt compelled to put it to use. So I returned home to Buffalo, New York, go Bills, and became a drug dealer legally. I was in pharmaceutical sales for just shy of 6 years. And it was a fantastic experience. I worked for Procter & Gamble, which is an incredible company. I didn't love the corporate environment and really felt as though I wasn't confident that I was the person moving the needle when it came to the outcomes of the products that I was selling. So I pleaded with my family to give me an opportunity to pursue my real estate passion again, making the commitment that I wouldn't leave Pharma until I had replaced that income with real estate. And if I couldn't do it in 2 years, I would give up the dream. But 15 months later, I was able to leave Pharma and not have it have a negative impact on our lifestyle. And things just evolved from there. I started to develop a team of my own, which I was one of the first in my market to do. It wasn't really a known thing. And that team ended up spiraling off into EnVision Real Estate, which is my brokerage today, because the broker that I was with was acquired by a much larger company, and it just didn't really feel like the right fit any longer. So I launched EnVision Real Estate as an independent boutique broker in January of 2018.
Awesome. Well, there's a lot of really interesting things, I think, from your background that we can kind of go into, because you've had two different locations, right? Real estate sales careers, which most people have not have. You had this professional, sales training, which I'd kind of like to know how that compares to real estate sales, because a lot of times in real estate sales, agents don't take it seriously, or there's a large percentage anyway that don't sell a lot of homes, and I think people that are in a professional sales career, like car sales or pharmaceuticals, medical equipment, like it's a lot more corporate run, a lot more structure, a lot more training probably, and professionalism. So like how did it compare, pharmaceutical sales to selling homes?
Most of my adult life has been in some form of sales, and so I've been fortunate that helped my transition and translated beautifully into real estate sales. Candidly, my first attempt at real estate in Texas, when I decided to leave the team and go independent, I was out of the business 6 months later because I didn't really understand how to build the book of business and what to do from that aspect. So when I moved into a sales career, once I graduated college and got that formalized training, everything kind of clicked from there. So I do think it's a huge opportunity in the industry as a whole to level up the training and development that we offer agents. It's something that I'm passionate about in my organization. I've had people actually say to me, like, what are you, just like a real estate training brokerage? And I said, I don't think that's a bad thing. I had to figure out a lot of things on my own, but EnVision has a very structured training and development program. And we make a commitment to get agents into production within the first 60 days, as long as they're following our process. And we've had success with that.
Wow, that's a really fast time frame for new agents. What are some of the things, the processes, or the steps that you put those agents through in the first 60 days? Like if they're joining your brokerage, like what are they doing the first 2 months that's getting them to succeed that most
Yeah,
brokerages
great
are not
question.
doing?
So we actually start even before we bring them into the organization. We bring them in for a week before we extend them an offer, and we give them a seat in our CRM, and we give them a handful of leads, some basic scripting, just to see how they'll show up, right? Your day one energy is usually your highest energy. And while there's a lot of great real estate schools out there, what we find is the licensing course doesn't necessarily teach you how to build your real estate business. And so if you're not comfortable on the phone and not willing to be uncomfortable until you get comfortable, you're going to struggle. So we have them kind of live the day in the life of real estate professionals for their first week. And at the end of that week, if they've at least made the attempt, we'll extend them an offer. And then we have a complete outline for their first 30, 60, 90 days. We do have an in-house training and development lead who is working with the new agents every morning. We ask them to show up every morning, Monday through Friday. And we have built out an entire curriculum that starts with learning the very, very basics of how to open a lockbox and how to utilize the MLS as a tool, all the way through how to run a buyer consultation appointment and eventually a listing consultation appointment.
What's the percentage, I'm curious, of people that join and do that trial week? How many of them actually like make it through and either stick with it or make enough calls that you're like, yes, we'll accept you. What's your fallout for that first week where they really have to, you
So,
know, dial and do realtor type
yeah,
stuff?
because we're starting the conversation about what the expectations are so early, we see about 70% make it through that first week. But then when it comes to the day to day, we're down to about a 50% retention by 90 days.
Yeah, which is I think that's probably actually a lot higher than um, the industry success rate. So I think it's pretty cool that you kind of weed out at least a third of them that first week because
Yeah, I mean,
are they just
we
not wanting
get
to make
a
the
lot.
calls or
Yeah, or they just, nobody really gave them the reality of what it takes to get started in the industry. And so rather than sell them some smoke and mirrors in this, glamorous selling sunset lifestyle, that all can exist, but it still takes work. And sometimes that work is uncomfortable. And so giving them I would say, a dose of reality, or really kind of a try before you buy, is a win for everybody because we invest a lot of time, energy, and resources into our agents that we want to make sure that they're going to show up for it.
how so before you had your brokerage, right? You had the team, then you
Yeah.
opened up the brokerage. Is the brokerage just an extension of the team model, or do you have some agents at the brokerage kind of doing their own thing but not on the team, or what's that mix like?
So we operate as a team, or a teamerage, I guess is the term. That's all the rage now. Um, so when I first launched EnVision, it was myself and my 5 team members, and it was truly a means to an end. I had no expectation of growing or how to grow. It was like, this is our group and we just need to be able to operate independently. But then people started to pay attention to what we were doing and reach out. And so the first couple of years that we grew was very organic, but which is great, but also means that there wasn't a lot of intention behind it. So it got to a point where the culture felt somewhat diluted because
Mm.
I didn't know, how to establish the culture, how to vet agents. I needed to have a clear identity on who we were and who I was as a leader. So once I got to that place where I was like, okay, I need to be a lot more intentional about this so that everybody here is on board with the direction we're taking the company, the standards we hold ourselves to. It did mean stripping some things back and starting again. But ultimately, it's been a benefit. Today, I have 30 agents, and though I have fewer agents starting in 2024 than I did when I started 2023, our transaction count is up 60%. So it just goes to show that the right people in the right seats helps move everything forward.
Yeah, that's tremendous for this market. How what did the agent count and transaction count look like, if you went back historically, just so other people can know what to expect? Because 18, 19 were kind of normal-ish years, and then you had the 2021 boom, and then the pullback the last couple of years. So what did that do to your agent count and transaction count over that like 5-year period or so?
Yeah, I think we all kind of had the shock and awe of 2020 when the world shut down and how are we going to pivot and adapt? And we did. And being in New York State, they were very structured and we were deemed non-essential during the COVID pandemic. So there were several months that we were not able to physically show homes. So that was a trying time. But we really used it to fine tune our skill set. So 2020 was a good year. 2021 was a fantastic year. We did just shy of 400 transactions, and I had about 45 agents at that point. Last year, we saw a contraction towards the beginning of the third quarter when the interest rates went up significantly, and we saw the continuation of inventory challenges. So I ended 2023 with about 38 agents, and we did 300 transactions. So this year we're on pace to do probably another 300 to 350 with about 30 agents.
Which for a lot of people listening, you might kind of feel scared or think like, wow, that's go from 400 to 300, but that's actually better than most team leaders I talk to. And, even if you're doing less deals in this market, you might be succeeding at amazing levels. Like you might be getting really, really good, more market share, right? Because we went from like 6.5 million home sales in 21 to like just under 4 million last year. So, big
and when we
pullback.
look at our market share actually didn't change much nominally. So it's very true, indicative of what was going on nationwide is the contraction in the number of transactions. So we're still in a really strong position. And honestly, what it forced me to do is take a step back and really analyze the business and understand who I needed to support the growth. And really look at how much am I getting caught up with shiny new object syndrome? What things do we really need? And I simplified a lot of things when we scaled back, which made everybody's life easier.
So what did simplifying things mean? Did you make processes easier, get rid of technologies you weren't using, or?
Yeah, so we got rid of technologies that we weren't using, that weren't being adopted, or there were a few that were a little bit clunky for, if 50% of my agents weren't going to use it, then it wasn't the right system. So we ended up, we use Sisu as the hub of our business, and then Follow Up Boss feeds into that. And it's funny because I generally say if everybody else is going left, I'm going to go right. So I went through a period of time trying to find, the unicorn of whatever the technology was at the time that nobody else was using. And then I had the epiphany that, well, if these gold standards exist, they exist for a reason. So why am I trying to reinvent the wheel? So that helped us immensely. And now we have the ability to analyze the business, not just on a reactive basis, but a proactive basis, because we're getting leading indicators as far as how the activities are translating into appointments set, met, under contract, et cetera. So it also gives me a lot more clarity in the business to make decisions moving forward instead of always taking those lagging indicators and having to react.
What about lead sources? Did you change lead sources during this time period as well?
So I never really thought of myself as an enigma, but I think I might be. I've never used Zillow or Realtor or any of the lead aggregators. And I won't say I didn't know to even purchase leads. I knew it was an option, but so much of my business when I was a team lead came from good old fashioned prospecting, circle
Mm.
prospecting, just sold calls, for sale by owners and expireds, which we weren't seeing a lot of expireds and still aren't. And for sale by owners, we're having success. So we did end up working with YLOPO. So we do have YLOPO leads now, buyer and seller leads. And for those who feel a better fit for us because they're more middle of the funnel. And with our approach being so consultative, we really get to help advance the lead through their journey without waiting for it to be ready to transact right now, which there's value to both, but for our purposes, the middle of the funnel leads really benefit our organization.
Yeah, it's funny. You use a lot of the same systems that Carrie and my wife's team uses. So they're on Follow Up Boss, they're on Sisu, Ylopo.
Yeah, I
We did
actually
used to.
listened to one of Carrie's, I listened to the podcast and I was listening to one of Carrie's most recent, and I thought the same thing. I go, wow, there's a lot of alignment here. So, which is great. It helps, feel like you're on the right track, because I think she was speaking in front of an audience and said, being an independent agent can be very lonely. And sometimes I think people forget, so can being a team leader or a broker owner, because it's not like I'm going to go down the street to my competitor and say, hey, what's working for you? You really have to be proactive in finding people generally outside of your market that are doing things that you aspire to do and are willing to share.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. We've benefited a lot from going to events or different coaching programs, or putting on our own masterminds. So there is like a ton of value, and we were independent for like 8 years, so it can feel a little bit more lonely, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but you have to like proactively seek out
Yeah, you're
other
on an
people that can help
island a
you.
little bit unless you know to go look for help. And it took me a couple of years before I realized that I needed that more than I thought I did.
Well, let's talk about the topic everyone's talking about. It's being misquoted by a lot of newspapers. The antitrust settlement, proposed changes coming to buyer agency, and how all of that works. So, like, what are you doing to prepare your team, your business, or how have you operated in the past, maybe even that has already prepared you for this moment?
Yeah, I think we're fortunate, coming from a strong sales background. I never was trained to work with anybody without some level of commitment. So from the onset of my career and the way that all of the agents conduct themselves within my organization is we've always required a buyer broker agreement. So it's not a huge shift for us in that capacity. I do think, the changes that are being proposed to the compensation being in the MLS, I honestly believe it's going to be equal conversation with the sellers as to the benefit of offering buyer agent comp, as well as with our buyers. But candidly, the way we've always presented the compensation to our buyers, especially in a market that a lot of us are seeing where there is a lack of inventory, is this is my fee. My fee is X. And I make every effort to get that fee covered by the seller from their proceeds. In the event that I can't, I will do my best to have it a line item as a concession or something through the mortgage side. And as a worst case scenario, you may have to come to the closing table with some additional funds, but you'll know that information going into any of these transactions. So I think from that standpoint, we're fortunate that it's not going to be a big shift, but we are putting a lot of emphasis behind having the conversation and the additional training with our agents. I said, we spend a lot of time being able to understand and articulate our value when we're meeting with a seller, but I don't feel that we've been as diligent doing that on our buyer presentation. So we're really drilling down step by step what our value is and what we bring to the buyers of our community as far as our value proposition.
Yeah, we've always trained to do it that way, and even if it was like when we did do Zillow leads, if it was like a lead that just wanted to show a house, we would do like a one house showing agreement, buyer
Mhm.
agency agreement. So like, yeah, I'm still in shock of how many agents in this moment in time were not operating with buyer agency agreements up front. I think if you've been doing that and you explain it how you do, I think the changes are going to be minimal for the people that are already operating that way. Like there will be some changes. You're going to have to call the listing agent, find out what the comp is, and there might be some extra discussion points around that, more awareness to it. But by and large, if you were already operating which is like a best practice, right? Like how you said, like this isn't as big a deal as many are making it.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think those that want to succeed will always find a way. So where there's challenge, there's always opportunity. And I think it's a win for the industry from the standpoint that the degree of professionalism is going to be elevated.
Yeah, and I think another thing that'll happen is your reputation and your ability to make transactions smooth, that could become even more important because under
Mhm.
the current system, it's a universal offer, right, of buyer agent cooperation. But now with it not being published in the MLS, you could have situations where a listing agent tells the seller like, "Hey, I'm getting an offer from Beth. She knows what she's doing. She closes 400 deals a year. Like, we ought to max out the payment to her. She's gonna be
Right.
easy to work with." Whereas like someone who does the part-time agent who does one deal a year doesn't put much effort into it. The listing agent and the seller may be less willing to pay them as much, because of their reputation, skill set, or whatever. So I think it's going to make it even more important to be a professional in this and give us even more of an advantage for the ones that are truly pros.
No, I think you're spot on because the what we say often to our clients is getting a contract accepted is one piece of the puzzle and it's an important piece. But being in New York, we're an attorney state, so there's a lot of steps from contract to close, and our
Mm.
closings are about 60 days. So the fact that we have a full-time support staff that's helping to orchestrate all parties involved and get us to the closing table, we have a 100% closing ratio. If we get you under contract, we will get you to closing. It doesn't mean there won't be bumps in the road, but our staff is trained to minimize the bumps. Most of the time, our clients don't even know about them unless we absolutely have to get them involved.
So I know before the show we were talking about some webinars or events you're doing to help educate, help train buyers, agents out there, or, on how to operate in the new rule set. Uh, and you may be working on more content or even a course on that. If people are interested in getting access to that or learning more as you build that out, how should they connect with you?
Yeah, the best way is going to be through my Instagram. So I'm Beth Matthews with two T's, and my handle is Beth by a Billion. Again, a nod to the Buffalo Bills, who have had a tumultuous several decades. I've been a Bills fan my entire life, so I've seen all the ups and downs, and it's kind of a running joke in Buffalo that we are very loyal fans, and even when the record didn't indicate, we'd go into every game saying the Bills are going to win by a billion. So it's a nod to my hometown, and so you can find me at Beth by a Billion. I think by the time this airs, the live version of the Buyer Mastery course will be well underway, if not completed. But I am recording it and creating some evergreen content that people will be able to go back and purchase separately. Much like you, Dan, you said, you didn't realize how many people weren't operating this way. And I've had the same revelation that I thought, well, if I've been doing this and we've had success with it for the last 6+ years, I feel like I owe it to the industry to share how to succeed for those that want to.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So, yeah, if you're listening to this, want to learn more, definitely connect with Beth on Instagram. Before we wrap up, I always like to do a hyper fast round if you're ready for a couple rapid fire questions here.
Yeah.
All right, what's your biggest piece of advice to a new agent in this market?
Get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's in any market and anybody starting out. I know this is rapid fire. I could go on, but I see so many times agents that are just on the cusp of like getting over that hump and they throw in the towel. And it's so hard as somebody who has done that. So I'm speaking from experience that if I had not stepped away from the industry when it got hard and pushed through, I'd be even further ahead than I am today.
All right, what's the biggest mistake you see experienced agents making?
I think the biggest mistake experienced agents make is their lack of ability to adapt.
Mm,
It is a challenge in the industry for not everybody, but for a lot that, well, not as fast paced as some other industries. The real estate industry is picking up some steam and we are seeing changes happen more frequently. And I think those that refuse to adapt are unfortunately going to be out of the business.
all right, if you had to start all over and you couldn't take your database or your reputation or money or anything with you, what's what's the first thing you do to go out and get business? You can only take what you've
Yeah,
learned, right? Door knocking?
yeah. Yeah, I love door knocking and just sold calls. I would find an agent in my office that had recently sold a property with multiple offers. Usually they're very well established and aren't doing as much outbound prospecting. And I would
Mm,
call every neighbor touting that we received multiple offers. And so I know there's still buyers looking and have you considered selling. That's truly how I built my business.
amazing. Last one, where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
Oh, well, before we pressed record, I said, it's March in Buffalo and there's still snow on the ground, and I'm not confident that there won't be we won't have a snow in May. So 5 years, I hope to be snowbirding. I love my hometown, but I am not a winter person, and I have goals of expanding EnVision outside of Buffalo. We're a very seasonal market, so things slow down dramatically during the winter months, and I would love to keep some momentum year round and spend my winters someplace where the real estate is booming and the sun is shining.
Amazing. Well, one more time before we sign off, if people want to connect with you, I think Instagram's the best way. How do they do that?
Yep. Instagram is the best way. I'm Beth by a billion, or Beth Matthews, Matthews with two T's.
All right. Well, thank you for being on the show today, and to all of our listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in. Please share this episode with other real estate agents or people you think would benefit from watching or listening, and we will see you next time.